Hi. We have such an incredible episode in store for you, and I'm so excited for you to hopefully get just as much out of it as I did. Now, to be completely forthcoming, it does include stories that touch on gang violence, murder, and sexual assault. So please be aware as you are listening, and I hope you find it as tremendous as I do.
Hi, I'm Gabriella Richardson, and I am a lover of learning. I am a cultivator of community, and I am a seeker of belonging. I am a messy and imperfect human, just trying to do my best to make this world a little bit of a better place. So I look forward to you joining me in that pursuit on the Nexus of Narratives. I'm extremely grateful to share some space with you. So thank you for coming on in here. And I know you as you've been for the last handful of years. And I haven't shared this with you yet, but when we first met, I remember the one big thing that stuck with me, and I told DJ I'm so grateful for, was meeting you and the family in this space where I was highly anxious and like not expecting to meet family. Like when I woke up that morning, I didn't think I was going to be meeting family. And then for him to say, oh, hey, do you want to come and meet my family today? And I'm like, oh, geez, okay. I'm anxious. Like I wasn't feeling ready. And to go into a space with your family and to immediately feel welcomed and like, it wasn't an interview. It wasn't, oh, hey, who are you? What do you do? What is this? Like, that didn't matter at all. And it was the coolest experience for me to go into a space and immediately be like, oh, hey, how's it going? So nice to meet you. This is great. Like, that's something I've carried with me that I want to emulate in other spaces, is not feeling the need for someone to audition for acceptance, but to immediately be welcomed in, no matter what. And that is very felt within your family. So
that's great. Appreciate
it.
Thank you. I mean, a lot of that had to do with the aura and everything that you put out. You brought that into the space, and the only thing we can do is just accept you for the way that you are, and that you made it easy.
Well, thank you. That's not something that I had felt a lot through my life, is to just immediately be accepted, be like, oh, I'm going to accept this person for who she is. And I think that's something that I'd always sought in life. And it was just like, wow, this feels great to go somewhere and feel immediately accepted. And in your family, like DJ and I were even talking about it, is like, I wouldn't have my family if they didn't accept me for who I was. My family wouldn't have each other if they didn't accept each other for who they are. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
For that.
That's a great point. I mean, we were just having a conversation about, my father and his own grandson. And that's a total opposite of what she's saying, because obviously those two clash, And like I said, I think it a lot of it has to do with you in general, and that's the kind of energy that you bring. And yeah, it's very easy to accept you for who you are.
Well, thank you. So I didn't say it earlier, but you're my father-in-law. So that's how I know you. And if someone, before we really dig into your life and the story that you're here to share, if someone just like bumped into you in the street and had just a quick moment, you're like, hey, I'm Daniel, this is who I am. Like, what would you share?
I'm not extremely forthcoming about sharing, but yeah, I would introduce myself, Daniel Richardson. I'm an avid fisherman, and pretty much I love life. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have like good corporate job. You're like, I'm just a family man. I go fishing. Got a good job. You're like, this is.
Yeah, I actually, I've had my own trials and tribulations, just like anyone else. Trying to get to a point to where, my career is pretty secure as possible, and I achieved that, and I'm happy with it, and pretty sad on that. And now it's like enjoy my grandbaby, and and everything else that comes along with that. So yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
And what a sweet relationship the two of you have too. I'm so excited to see how it grows over time. She just adores you.
She's a doll. She's a doll. Same thing. That energy she has is just, the light of my life.
Yeah, she is a little light of herself.
Yeah.
So I shared with you yesterday when we were on the phone, just in preparation for this, that what I have deeply admired about you is that you have overcome so much to get to where you are here in your life, and have really been a testament to how important it is to not judge somebody by bad moments in their life, and to give them space to grow as a person. And so however you would like to start, would love to hear the story that you are here to share, wherever you want to go with it.
Well, I'm not 100% sure on the direction when it comes to sharing. I'm going to share anything that hopefully can help somebody else, when it comes to, breaking through whatever adversity or whatever that, they have what's going on in their life. Because, I think a lot of people has been through certain challenges that they felt was just unbearable, and, there are times in your life where, it can get that way. And for me, what I tell my kids, my daughter, it's really a blink of an eye. What's unbearable right now, once you get through it and you ever think back at it, it was so long ago, and it was only for a split second. But yes, in that moment, you could barely breathe. It was just so overwhelming. You really didn't think you were going to survive. So the challenges, the strengths, the tools, or whatever it is that you have to pull through and identify and to get through it. I think, that's where people would really, really, need the help to identify that so they can get through it.
So what was one of those moments for you that you might have felt like, wow, this is really unbearable, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get through this?
Well, I guess for me, it's not having the guidance that could answer those questions and hold your hand through those situations and things like that with my parents. My parents are still alive to this day. I communicate with them pretty much almost daily, and I love them to death. But at the same time, no, they were not in a position to where they had it all figured out enough with, all their children that they could just, they were the person you go to try to get answers and explain the situation. And, it wasn't an open book and an open door like that. You just couldn't do that. And so that left you in a position to where you had to figure a lot out by yourself. And as a youth, especially growing up in, urban neighborhoods and things like that, gang-ridden neighborhoods, drug-ridden neighborhoods, a lot of those decisions that, experiences that you have, sometimes you make mistakes and you're forced to kind of deal with it and enter it and try to survive on your own, because you didn't have that kind of support. So for me, whenever I hit my head on a brick wall, those are the times that I had to really dig deep and should I give up? Is this it? What's the point? Kind of questions, and then kind of figure it out, and work through it. So I would probably say from a very early age, it was probably considered, overwhelming because of the nonstop, issues that you have to figure out on your own. And that's pretty overwhelming at some point.
So what were some of those situations as a kid that you're like, I didn't have guidance? You expressed you're in this area that there's gang influence, there's drug influence, you don't have a lot of guidance from your parents, and you have to figure it out on your own. Like, what were some of those things going on in your life?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, the peer pressure alone to either join or be involved in the gang activity and things like that. I mean, it's surrounded you 24 hours a day, and some people even had it in their own household.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I did have an older brother who I looked up to, and he was very, very influenced by the gang lifestyle, and I did basically kind of idolize and follow him. But yeah, it was something that I had to eventually identify was just a dead end street and get off that path. And luckily I was able to do that, but it was challenging from, I would say, elementary all the way up to junior high. That's how embedded that was in my community, and we weren't leaving the community. If we did, then you went down the street to the next one, which was, infested all the same. So yeah, that was one of my biggest challenges if I went back as far as I can remember.
And so you said you looked up to your brother, and that's the world that he was involved in. So what was it that you kind of idolized about him in that you felt like it was worth following or, worth looking up to him?
Well, I mean, when it comes to all that you basically know, it's regardless if he was there or not, my universe at that time was it. If you look at social media now, you got influencers, you got actors, you got whatever, and people are, looking in those directions like, oh, I would love to do that one day, or, this person is so confident, so great, and, I would love to be like that, and so on and so on. Well, we had actors and influencers too, but there were drug dealers and other gang members and things like that. So when it comes to role models, my father was, a great role model to a certain extent. The biggest issue was he was very strict, being a military man himself. So there was a conflict there. It was basically rebelling against anything that he asked you to do. So it wasn't like he was out there doing, anything negative. No, actually he has a military and a police background. But there was a period that I rebelled against him, and then of course we had a very early on divorce between my parents. I think I was 3 maybe. And they clashed with each other. So you can imagine now co-parenting today's environment, that communication is very important so that the kids can't use it against you, or, both parties can work together and prevent a lot of things from happening. We didn't have that. So they didn't talk. And anytime he requested something or put his foot down about something, we can always run to the other, And my mom struggled with bipolar. She was bipolar, or is. So it was easy to, want to stay with my mom, the mother, in order to get away with what you want to get away. Stay out late, do what you wanted to do, versus being with the strict father who actually didn't listen and only over-disciplined. So there was a difference there. But when it came to the actors, in the neighborhood, it just turned out, the reason I idolized my brother was because he was very good at it. So if other people wanted to be him, and this is the atmosphere, the universe, then yeah, he was, the Charles Bronson of the neighborhood. So yeah, I looked up to my brother when it came to, what I knew at that time and who was performing the best at that time. And that's the kind of the position that he was in.
So what I'm hearing is like this interesting recipe of a limited worldview. Of course, we are the product of what we are exposed to, and that's how we develop our beliefs and our patterns. But then also this rebellion against the over-disciplinary figure, because as kids, yeah, we want freedom. We don't want to be told. I guess nobody really wants to be told what to do, but it's this recipe of this environment that you were in.
Yeah.
And you shared something with me yesterday that was really powerful about being in this box. And I think you touched on that with this limited worldview of that was all you knew. So you'd also shared about what it was like to start to get out of that box. So what did that transition look like?
Yeah, it's crazy because that box, it was pretty toxic. It would be considered very dangerous because people don't always and necessarily, every day, overnight, they don't make it out of that box. And that's everything from just trying to go to the supermarket with your parents or by yourself and, become a victim of a drive-by shooting or, gang violence or something like that. So the box was very toxic. And it's crazy now that I look back that it was considered such a norm to navigate that space on a day-to-day kind of basis. I mean, honestly, I had explained it to people, like if you do a Google search of, where I grew up now, it really doesn't look like the place or an environment, that would be the background of some of my experiences and stories, things like that. One was I could sit in my living room because I stayed right across the street from a park and hear people in the summertime, and it'd be nighttime, which pools and things close, but they can't prevent kids from climbing the gate. They play in the pool, and you hear the kids bouncing on the diving board, jump, boing, 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 splash. Next kid, boing, 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 splash. And the next kid, boing, boing, boing. Then you hear gunshots, bow, 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 splash. And then when you wake up in the morning, the pool is empty.
Wow.
So that's the type of neighborhood that I grew up in, and it became such a norm. It was a park, and in certain times, I guess before dark, it wasn't that bad. Your kids are there. Your kids were pretty much in eyesight from the house. I could play on the playground, and my parent could look out the window and still see us. But once it got a little bit dark, and around holidays and stuff like that, it got a little rowdy. There was a lady that was chased from the park, and she jumped through my bedroom window, and she was completely naked. And there was a figure outside her window that was chasing her, and he ran away. And it was obviously that she was obviously being assaulted, probably most likely raped or something like that, and she got away. So that's the environment that I pretty much grew up in, and yeah.
And I think, like you said, it's hard for people to get out of that. And you are an anomaly to have been able to step out of it and continue to grow despite all of that you were around through your youth. And so you can take this wherever you'd like, of what was that like for you to make that transition and start to pivot? Because I'm sure there were so many beliefs that you had about yourself, about the spaces, about the world, what the world was like, that were developed within you by this being all that you were exposed to, and some like really horrific things that were right across the street or jumping through your window.
Yeah. Early on, I would have to say that I did get some good boosts from sports. I did play football. And so there was several coaches involved that saw some real good things in me. And I was able to travel to the valley and different schools and things like that, play sports in those areas. Gangs still followed. I don't care how far in the valley you went. You're really not out running that in California, where I'm from. But at the same time, these men, you know, they had different values and instilled certain things when it came to confidence and help me question my box, you know, that I was living in. And once you, or at least I, started to question that, it wasn't something that like turned off. It never went away. I mean, I'm still questioning the same way today, you know. But once I actually got to a space to where things, I was realizing how much things didn't make any sense. Then it was like the Matrix, you know, when you take that pill and it's like your eyes are open. Once that happened, then all I wanted to do at that point is prosper, grow, and get better in whatever I was doing at that time. And luckily, it had nothing to do with anything gang related or such and such, because by that time I had transferred to kind of focus on sports and things like that. And I would say that was probably the start, you know. And I recall running into situations where there was this one time that I was surrounded by quite a bit of gangbangers. And they were talking a lot of mess. And yeah, I actually feared for my life. But the space I was in at that time, I just spoke up. You know, I'm not one of those type of people that's going to try to bullshit talk you, you know. But kids was telling me it's like how he's going to beat my ass, basically. And I said, "There's not one of you that can hit me harder than my father did." Mm-hmm. And when I said that, you could see in their face, like a couple of dudes was like, "Shit, yeah, my dad beat the shit out of me too." And when I said that, and I was serious, I didn't run. I just said, "It's not one of you can actually hit me harder than my father did." Mm. And they let me go, and I walked away. You know, so there was a space that I eventually started to get to where I wanted, you know, a better life for myself at that time, and I was ready to fight for it. I was not giving up on it, and none of the other negativity made any sense. So I was not falling for, you know, the banana in the tailpipe. I was focused. Mm-hmm. So a couple coaches helped with that. There were some youth counselors that were very strong with some guidance that I received early on. And that was the start.
And what do you feel like shifted in what you believed about the world? Because you said you were exposed to something else. You started to have a drive to say, okay, I see different. I want different. I'm going to get different. And did you feel any of those beliefs that you had kind of linger with you? What was that experience like?
I would say the belief walls that had to come crumbling down would be similar to what you said in the beginning of you being introduced to the family and didn't have to sell yourself. You were just accepted, you know, from the beginning. I didn't believe that I was worthy of, you know, acceptance from anyone outside of this turbulent box that I lived in. So if I am actually now, you know, visiting other communities, other people, other families, or sharing with me when it comes to holidays. Sometimes our holidays were rough, but at the same time, the coach, the counselor, they're having a great holiday and they invite me. I'm there. I'm experiencing something else. So it wasn't until I was receiving that same acceptance for exactly who I was, with the limited attire, meaning the only thing I would have been wearing at that time would have probably been stereotypical clothes that symbolize someone from, a gang environment. But you're going to accept me exactly the way I am, It wasn't until I started to experience that I actually was able to start knocking down some of those belief walls and get more confidence in myself and things like that. Because just because you wake up one day and you want to do better and achieve something doesn't mean that your exterior shows exactly how you feel, what you want to do, and who you are on the inside. Because there's a lot of times that doors were closed just in my face because of, people judging a book by its cover. So yeah, as I continue to grow internally, and then of course, it started to manifest in, how I presented myself and everything. That all changed, but it started with, acceptance from people who didn't judge me, that way. And that gave me the confidence to continue to go forward, because you can imagine not receiving that acceptance and just continue to have doors slammed in your face. That can really, really hinder you, because you're like, why should I change? Why should I do anything different? They're not going to let me in anyway. They're not going to listen to me. And they're only going to assume that I'm 100% negative and shouldn't be sharing the oxygen that they breathe. So believe it or not, I mean, that would have been considered a belief.
Yeah.
And, I would say that was probably my earliest negative belief that was, I broke through, and, hopefully I'm glad it wasn't reinforced by a lot of people to make me digress back with my progress.
So it's not only like you worked so hard, but it's also like you almost got lucky in a way to have the right recipe to get out. You had your drive, your desire for better, and you had people who believed in you to get there.
Yeah.
And like, I wanted to just sit with a little bit longer this, how people accepted you, invited you to show up differently. And I think that's something really big that people can get out of listening. Is what it made me think about was all of these programs that we have for at-risk youth. So important to show people others ways of being and living. But really what there's a really big need for focus on is everybody else, to make sure they're not closing those doors on people because they're making a judgment. And I had told DJ at one point that one of my soapboxes that I get on is how we as people can keep people in a box, because we're like, oh, but those people, they behave like this. Those people are animals. Those people always act like this. But that's actually the exact behavior that's closing those doors and keeping people from growing, is this idea that growth isn't an option, that evolution isn't an option. It's like this horrible vicious cycle. Whereas if people who don't have that experience could just be open and accepting.
Yeah.
It's changed your life. How many others could it change?
Yeah, and I'm pretty old now, and
you're not that old, but okay.
I would say one of the biggest challenges in that area is in my youth. I mean, in my grandparents would say the same thing too. Yeah, there was a lot of mischievous things, when you're youth, but the challenge now with today's youth is this mischievous activities, when I was growing up, it was a lot of it was juvenile activities, but now they're crossing the realm of adult activities. Mischievous activities are just straight up criminal activity that is considered adult activity or adult crimes.
Like, what do you mean by those differences?
I mean, there was a lot of fighting going on. There were guns always, but there was a lot of fighting going on. People got hurt, people got killed, and they didn't even have a gun that was involved. But it's very rare today that there aren't guns involved. So that's what I mean by, there's a lot of mischievous activities, even when it comes to reckless driving or something like that. In a lot of cases, there's still a gun somewhere around, and that elevates the whole thing to a whole different level from when I was growing up. So I said that with the intentions of saying that, yes, the youth that's, endangered, and, hopefully, the programs can help. They just really need to start a lot younger now. When it comes to influencers, or whatever, they're getting influenced at such a young age that it's like coding. The older they get before someone can actually show them that kind of guidance, there's a lot of rewiring that has to be done at that point. For me, I would say probably high school, I was starting to experience a lot of change and open to that change. But by the current youth standard, by high school, if they're already going down the wrong path, it's very hard to do that rewiring at that point, because so much has changed. So much has changed with careers. I mean, I was growing up, I would have been happy to be like an electrician or a plumber or something like that, a carpenter with my hands. That was not a bad thing. I was, if I could pull that off, that would be great, but try advocating for that to the current youth. They'd be like, no, because they're so influenced by other things. It's like, they see it in social media, and it seems to be so easy that why would I select the one that's going to require me to work the hardest? Meaning that's physical work, that's, and so on and so on. And, and I think the wiring now for them, it has to start earlier to try to get them on a good track a lot sooner before they get all of these different ideas.
And so I'm hearing a couple of things there. One is like taking it a few back, is this access to tools that can take someone's life a lot easier. Whereas before, you guys would get in a fist fight over a discussion, and you could probably still make it out, try to overcome something. But now, that snap decision to take somebody's life, it can come a lot faster.
Yes.
And so that's an added danger that exists now with greater access as opposed to then.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, this added exposure at an earlier age, that almost like kids are growing up faster is what I'm hearing. And they're like developing beliefs and thought patterns that are like deeply ingrained sooner than what you had experienced, is what you're
100%
noticing.
Yeah.
And so you had this opportunity to make this shift and this transition, part of it through sports, and another you had shared like through becoming a parent, and it constantly changing and such. But what was that like for you in some of those other moments that you noticed additional shifts throughout your life?
I mean, the parent part is a very good one, because regardless of, actually growing to a point to where I'm seeing some success with, being able to, achieve normal things such as, first time I got my own apartment, my own car, and, I'm living now, and I have my own family who originally looked at me and my brother and said, yeah, I don't, and this is what they said, is like, we don't believe that they will ever live past 18. You know, so it wasn't like they rid us off, but to a certain point, we didn't believe that neither. You know, I got married at 19 because I felt like I wasn't going to live that long.
Wow.
So I just immediately wanted to transition into something different, family mode, and just put my drive into that. And even then, being a family man at a very young age, got married at 19, I almost got killed in front of my wife several times.
Wow.
You know, just walking down the street with her, and someone recognized me and came up and either started shooting or chased me. I had to run a separate direction from my whole family just to make sure that they're safe.
Wow.
So once I got to a space to where I'm actually doing the responsible thing and taking care of my family, that's a whole separate set of trials and tribulations and mistakes that you have to navigate that, unfortunately for my family, I didn't have the parents that had the, 60-year marriage, anniversaries. No, like I said, I think they were only married for like 3 or 4 years. And I didn't learn much from them. Luckily, I was so young, I didn't pick up any negative, such as disrespect, fighting, or anything. I picked up none of that. My father was very stern with, you never put hands on, a man doesn't put hands on a woman and doesn't take from a woman, and so on and so on. So I did get those values from my dad and try to instill that in my own kids, and so on and so on, and live my life that way too. But simple things like, and I don't know if this is odd or not, but I never had a conversation with my parents about credit, and I have a story. It was this, like a shopping center. And I remember I wanted a cassette player. I wanted a new cassette player. And this is when we're talking about beliefs and things like that. So I walked in there and I probably had $75 on me for like a new cassette player. And the salesperson behind the counter was like, you could get the CD Walkman right here that has a 3-second skip on it and everything. And I'm really dating myself by saying that. But that was a big deal. Like you trip while you're walking and your music doesn't skip. That's a big deal. And she was like, just give me your social security number, and in 5 minutes I'll give you a decision. I was like, what? Okay. Well, I gave it to her, and 5 minutes she said, all right, you get the Walkman. I remember walking out of that store, it's like, are these people stupid? Just gave me $100 Walkman and they think I'm going to pay for it? And I ruined my credit before I even knew what it was. I remember that like yesterday. I had no clue what credit meant before that moment that lady said that.
Wow.
And my belief was, these people are crazy.
Yeah. Do they know what they just did?
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of, like, you just weren't educated.
I mean,
like, you didn't have that
guidance. A normal
conversation
that you can have with your parents. It's like, hey, this is what I was just told, or blah, blah, blah. And if your parents didn't tell you about it in advance, it'd be like, no, son, this is this, and that's so on and so on. That's what this means, or so on and so on. Either do it or don't do it, or give me the information to make that decision myself. But no, that was, I would say, a very rude awakening.
Wow. Yeah. I don't remember how old I was when I started learning about credit, but.
Yeah, my daughter's 10 and she knows about credit. So, yeah.
I suppose now every time you go to a store, you're asked if you want a credit card, so it's easier to open that conversation.
You're right. That's a good point. I mean, honestly, they're soliciting you everywhere now, so that conversation starts earlier. Like, what is this? You typically get answers, but no.
But still, I think it also speaks to different environments that people are raised. They're provided with different levels of education. and being in the environment that you were in, talking about financial literacy at a young age was not something that was going to happen.
I think my parents were pretty embarrassed. And even if, say for instance, I would have been exposed to it, and then I would have came home and said, I'm gonna have this conversation with my own parents. No, that door would have been shut in my face so hard. Like, boy, get out of here. I'm like, but mom, can I have my own bank account? I mean, nowadays, you got the joints and so on that you do with your kids and so on. I don't even know if that existed back then, but either way it go, that conversation would have been shut down before it even started.
And why do you think that is?
Because of the fact that they didn't have all the answers. They would have been too embarrassed to admit that. So it's very easy just to shut it down, and that would be kind of like the type of household that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go anywhere just yet. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment.
Check it out. Yeah.
I am so grateful that you have chosen to spend your time with me here on the Nexus of Narratives. I know that time is our most invaluable resource, and I am grateful for your support by just listening. If you would like to further support the podcast and my continued work in this space, please go to www.nexusofnarratives.org. That is NEXUSOFNARRATIVES.org for more content, ways to support, and connect with others. The Nexus of Narratives is a project, a passion project of mine in the Nexus Impact. So if you are looking for coaching services to become the type of leader that others want to follow, or help improve the culture and engagement of your teams, your organizations, and build greater community to help reduce lost costs due to turnover and inefficiency, reach out to me. I would love to help support you in your work. And if that is the avenue that you would like to go, you can find me and connect on my website. That is the nexusimpact.com or THENEXUSIMPACT.com. Thank you.
And then that perpetuates its own cycles of separation and othering and putting people into boxes. That could probably be a conversation for an entire day.
Yeah.
Now, so just to continue kind of tracing around, is you had your family, and it sounds like you were still being chased by this box. Like I have this kind of animated picture in my head of you had moments with your coaches to work on stepping out of the box, expanding this box. And then you have a family, you get married, you don't think you're going to make it very long, so you want to make sure that you can try to take these steps. And yet this life seems to be chasing you, is what I'm picturing.
Right.
So what was that?
So
like?
that's a great point, because that's exactly another thing that I ended up realizing. So regardless, as you get older, and you can actually go places, and people would never ever assume that this lifestyle had any influence or you were ever a part of it because of how you talk and how you carry yourself. But I'm still going home in the same box, regardless if this used to be my parents' house. Now that's my apartment, same neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
And that means that I, physically can still run into someone that wasn't as, blessed as I was, and still got a chip on their shoulder, and that happens. There are people my age now that run into people because they think that they can go back to this environment where they grew up, and I'm going to coach and do this and try to help the next generation. And there are still people that lose their life because their past still kind of haunts them. A lot of times these are actually people who had some probably egregious offenses or something like that other people didn't forgive them of. But it still happens. Not everyone falls in that category. Just because you grew up in a certain environment doesn't mean you fall in that category.
Mm-hmm.
But the next thing I had to realize was that for my kids' safety, I have to continue to grow and transition differently. Mm-hmm. And how I navigated that was I eventually was able to travel outside of California when I started actually truck driving. Mm. And then that opened my eyes up to a lot of other things, being able to see the world at a very young age, around 25. I'm pretty much going to all the states, and experiencing, the differences there. And I eventually moved my kids out of California. Mm-hmm. And that would really helped when it came to making sure that they didn't fall within the same quicksand that my parents couldn't move. And even though they knew how bad the neighborhood was, they were not able to make that transition.
And why not?
It would have been funds, employment, education, that whole category. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I grew up briefly with what do you call it? When you get the opportunity to experience, some form of like generational wealth, meaning my grandma left her home, her house to my mom. So I grew up in a nice house, but it was still in a bad neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And my mom either couldn't or didn't know how to leverage that and potentially get her kids out of a bad neighborhood to another neighborhood because her home was paid for. Mm-hmm. And like I said, she was bipolar. So a majority of her life, she was ill at some form or another. But luckily with her illness, she always had a home to go to because her mom left her home. But there are some families that, get an opportunity like that and they will sell and, of course, move out of the ghetto and get their family out of it. But I don't think my mom knew how to do that. Mm-hmm. And she didn't have anybody to lean on to help her navigate that,
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a maze with so many traps along the way, and like invisible traps and invisible walls.
Yeah.
That it honestly seems like a bit of a miracle that you were able to continue with this resilience and this determination to get out of where you were.
Yeah.
And now as a father, a grandfather, and in a completely different space of your life, like, how do you feel like reflecting on that and kind of like the evolution of yourself? Like, what does that feel like?
Well, it really makes me want to give back. And that's one reason why, regardless of how uncomfortable I am talking about my past and my youth, it really makes me want to give back as much as possible and help others, because I do have brothers and sisters who, in all reality, did not have as bad an experience as I did, or even my older brother. Mm-hmm. And they still struggled as much or even more. And some of them haven't even made it out of that environment. They still stay there. And I feel like I can actually communicate very well with people in that environment. And, I really would like to help as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. So to kind of make a little bit of a pivot, I think there were a lot of moments of kind of lessons along the way that I think people listening or watching can hopefully take with them to be more mindful or considerate of how they show up in spaces, or, you know, check their judgments on others. But from your perspective, how can your story create more connection for people who might resonate with something that you shared?
Well, hopefully when it comes to people that actually want to help, hopefully help still understand how they come into the space, their, you know, judgments and so on and so on, how they impact the direction or trajectory of the people who are trying to navigate in that very limited box. If you slam the door in their face, then yeah, that's going to almost 100%, you know, seal their face to and their beliefs currently where it's at in that environment, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, if anything, I just want those people to understand that when I was at my lowest point and was able to, you know, either reach out and someone was there, you know, not judgmental at all, and to give me the advice, the guidance that I needed, which was very, very important at that time. It's like a domino effect, you know, because once you experience that, it actually opens up trust in your heart, my heart, so that the next person or the next opportunity is so on and so on, I can identify it. Sometimes you don't even know what that looks like until you experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and someone could be very close-hearted because everyone's been close-hearted to him or her.
Mm-hmm.
So until you actually experience that from someone, you don't even know what that feels like.
Yeah.
You know, so it could be looking you dead in the face and you won't grab for that lifeline, or because one is that requires some vulnerability. And even like I was saying now, get with the youth at a younger age, because once they get to a certain point, they're already, you know, trying to protect whatever vulnerability that they have. So what they're displaying is hardness,
Mm-hmm.
you know, meaning they're not open and they're not accepting. And people feel that. If you came in, you know, like that, and I'm ready to give and advise you and, you know, what do you need kind of thing, and you came into the space that way, then now the door is not open. Mm-hmm. It's slightly closed or however, you know, but the moment that that person opens up in trust and the door is not slammed in his face, he'll learn from that. Mm-hmm. And then that can actually build like a domino effect to a point to where he can eventually, or she can climb out of that negative space. Mm-hmm. But until you're able to trust, that's just not going to happen, because all you're doing is you just have your current beliefs in a headlock. Mm-hmm. Until you release that, and you can't do that until you trust.
Yeah.
So that's what I would advise for mm-hmm. anyone that, you know, wants to try to, you know, reach, you know, at-risk youth or anything like that is,
But I think whether it's at-risk youth or the person across the street or trying to build a relationship with someone who's different from them, like, I would actually encourage anyone listening or watching, like, if you tuned out at some point, like, rewind, listen again to everything that you just said in response to that question. And, like, that's it right there, is be open, be accepting, let those judgments take a back seat, bring an openness of yourself so that it can be inviting of others. Don't close the door on somebody because of a preconceived judgment. And it's reciprocal. Like, the energy that you bring into a space is going to be reflected back at you. And the invitation here whether someone had an experience that they can resonate with anything that you shared or not, is don't close doors on other people because of your own judgments, because those judgments are then now holding others back. And the domino effect could be good, or it could be the last door that needed to be closed in that person's face for them to make a really bad decision. Or it could be the one door that needed to open for them to change their lives and change the lives of everybody around them.
Yeah.
And that's like, for me, like the shining headline of all of this and why it's so important.
I agree. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna encourage people again, like just rewind and listen like a few times to that, let it like really get in there. So how about, for anyone listening, whether they are or not in a relatable place, like what might you have said to your past self at any phase of this evolution?
Something to accelerate. I mean, it would be something just to light a fire under his butt a lot earlier, a lot sooner. And it would be very close to like what I said before when it comes to those issues were really just a sand speck in time. But they were so overwhelming, like you felt, at least I felt like this is it. I can actually die from this, meaning that's how hard or much it hurted, whatever it is that I was going through. And that is basically not having any direction. No one believes in you. And how can I get anything right if I just don't know what to do? So that's a very painful place to be. And I remember having that conversation with myself, and it was actually at the beach. It was facing the ocean. It was nighttime, and I think it was even raining. And I got out of my car, because I'm saying this to myself on my car, and I got out of my car and just stood there in the rain because I was able to have this conversation. And I could have been screaming at God, but I'm having this conversation and it's raining, so no one can see the tears running down my eyes. And even though there was no one there neither, but so if I had a conversation with my earlier self, I would try to, kind of convince him that, you know what, tomorrow, what you're feeling right now doesn't matter. It's only a speck in time. You have to pick yourself up and continue with 200% of the effort and do not look back. You have to continue going forward. You have to continue to do the work and put your one foot in front of the other, and don't dwell on the past. Because without that, it's part of the trap. It's part of the quicksand. So that's the information that I would have tried somehow to convince my younger self, so that he could just realize and pep up and, accelerate. He got there, but he could have got there sooner with some guidance like that, because there's some people that didn't make it off that beach, but lucky for me, even today, it's something that I still believe when you're down and out, and that actually opportunity, the water, the moon, the waves, it gave that to me. Because, there are times where I was like, how am I going to feed my family, where I'm going to sleep, or whatever. And then I remember, I am free. I'm right here at the water. This is beautiful. I hear it. You feel it. And there's a lot of people that don't even have that. They don't have the opportunity. They didn't get the opportunity. They're no longer here. So just that thought alone gave me enough pep to just like, what the hell I'm crying for? Walk off the beach and go get to work. So that's what I would reiterate to my younger self is, yeah, you're still blessed. And whatever you're going through at that time is a speck in this timeline that we're here on this planet.
It's amazing. Like, yeah, feel it, get through it. You got this. Keep going.
Yep.
And in those moments, like especially that moment you're sharing moonlight, screaming, maybe
I was
cry. And
I believe God heard me. He was like, damn, that little kid is mad. A little speck on that beach right there, pretty bright.
That speck of time, the speck of sand on that beach is pretty loud.
That was it.
What did you need to feel most connected to the people around you in those moments?
I mean, in that moment, I didn't feel really connected to anything except what hit me in my face was I am blessed still to be here. So if there was a response, like I'm not going to be the person that'd be like, God spoke to me and I heard his voice. No, I didn't. But there was a realization that came through on that evening. And it was, you're blessed. You're still here. You're still alive. Get to work. So connection, I feel more connected now with a lot of people. And I mean, in general, even strangers, because of my experiences and what I've been through. There really wouldn't be a time that I am at a venue, event, walking down the street that I don't feel connected to the person that's next to me. If they're scream out, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna feel their pain too. I mean, there's always fears, and of course, you got to be cautious about everything these days. But at the same time, I'm connected, and I'm here to help my brothers and sisters, and not, be the problem, part of the problem. So, and that's something that I got from my dad too. He's the type that will run into the fire regardless, and not from it.
It speaks to the openness that you had shared about earlier, like wanting to keep your heart open and wanting that from other people and needing that to be led. It sounds like you're working to lead with that openness in order to feel more connected to the people around you.
Yeah, definitely.
And for people who've been listening and can't resonate with your story, they haven't experienced what you've experienced, and this is completely alien to them. How else do you think that your story can create connection for people who don't have that shared experience?
Well, it still goes back to just being open to, other people's, trials and tribulations. I mean, we're all dealt our individual cards, and that's the deck we were given, and just don't cancel them out, because you never know, the person that's in front of you, of course, might not be the next president of the United States or something, but he could be one of the people that runs into a fire and saves the woman that's going to have the next president. Things like that. And that's the way I look at it, is that you never know what's in store for the people who you cross paths with. And trying to be open enough to give them an ounce of space, because sometimes that's all it takes. And that's very powerful and very strong, because there's a lot of people that don't even give that much. As soon as you cross paths with someone, the energy or directly, they're shutting it down, and negativity are pushing people away like negatives on a magnet or something, you know. And I mean, I want them to receive as many blessings as possible for themselves. And so that means, you know, at least for their own sake, don't be closed-hearted, because you never know about the person how that person can actually end up blessing you later.
Yeah, whether directly or indirectly.
Right.
And I think that's what our world needs more of, is more openness, more compassion, more empathy, less judgment. And whether we are there to witness it or not, something amazing can come of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Was there anything else that you would like to share?
I mean, this has been great. And I'm hoping that, you know, someone can get and take something positive out of it. But yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. You have a very unique story, so I really appreciate it. And I hope it opens the hearts of many to lower some of that judgment.
Awesome. That would be outstanding.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
A special thank you goes out to Sparta Media Group for producing this podcast ever so fantastically. So thank you to Jesse and his team. And an additional special thank you goes out to my sweet and talented husband, DJ Richardson, for creating the music that is used in this production. Thank you so much, so deeply, for spending your time with me here on the Nexus of Narratives. I hope that you found this to be a tremendously valuable use of your time and your capacity, and that this might help you to create greater connection and compassion in the spaces all around you.
You don't have them on yet.
Oh yeah, take your throat.
Okay. Because you usually you're like, all right, have it in the middle, Gabby. And usually it follows that, all right.
All the cams will hit it. Here we go. Okay. And good slating.
All right. This is the Nexus of Narratives, and I am chatting with my father-in-law, Daniel. Take one.
All right. Excellent. Okay.
I still think it's funny that it's not like things happen immediately after that.
Everybody
I
always
always
thinks
like,
of you.
yeah, it's just like,
No,
go.
You can set it. Okay. And we are good.
You ready? Okay. That's it. Well, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good and yourself?
Good. So, thank you for taking some time to come in and chat today. And actually, before we dig into this, I want to move because your beard is gonna snag on this. So let me.
Put it up on his. If you're looking at
Collar?
the left side. Yeah.
I was like, wait, before we actually get into this.
There we go. Okay.
All right, yeah. Because I had Michael, when I was chatting with him, his beard was scraping on it, and you just hear like. All right. Another little audio signature for me. Hello again.
Hello.